your family has transitioned from homeless to home ownership. And I know there are so many people listening that want to know, how did you make this a reality for you? How did you do that?
So I had a job where I was a building manager, and it was a live-in. And then one day they came in and they took the keys and they said, we got to let you go, because we had a company switch. So the new company didn't want to hire me on, and the old company didn't have any work for me. So they said, unfortunately, we have to let you go. And so because of that, I lost my job in my home. And in the process of all coming back to it, I'm like, okay, let's switch career paths. Because then this way, if I lose my job, I won't lose my home. If I lose my home, then I won't lose my job. So then I got into more of a driving career path. And going through the struggle of just kind of like the mental health, we were about 4 months where we had no home and no job, to eventually someone believed in us and let us rent a place with no job, which I was shocked because I wouldn't have done the same. So we're very grateful for them. And then I did whatever job that I could do. And the first job that I got into was sanitation. And so I had to go and clean portable toilets. And so you're already down and you're like, this is what I have to do. And the first week was the worst. The second week when you got paid, you're like, okay, you know what? The money is not that bad. I guess I can do it. And you just have to do whatever you can with your family, for your family. And through that, what I decided to do at my job was I decided to give it my best. I was going to try to have the cleanest toilets. I was going to be the nicest person to my customers and be really nice and try to be an amazing person. And through this, I had people who were fighting for me to go to their sites. I had people who were really happy to see me there because I had a smile. They were shocked, like, how could you be happy in this situation that you're in? And you'll notice that other people start to be happy around you. And then you're able to work from that. From that, I was able to get into concrete, which actually pays significantly more, and it's not as dirty. Yeah. And with that, I still have that same mindset to have the best that I can do. And people see that, your employers see that. And with that, they will kind of increase your wage, increase your status. Even the Lord sees that because you're being faithful for what he's given to you at the moment. And he will start to increase all those things for you. And then you'll have an opportunity where you can say, hey, we ended up actually moving out of the city to a smaller suburb. And it was cheaper, and we were able to get a better house. And we went from a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment with 3 kids, which was very difficult, to now we have 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and 4 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just great to see how, as you are faithful in the little things and that you keep on praying and trusting in the Lord, that you get to see his work go through your life. And you just got to trust in the promise and take it one day at a time.
And you remain persistent. And even when you had to do the jobs that you didn't want to do, you did it with a spirit of excellence. And there's a verse in the Bible that speaks of working for God and not for man. And that's kind of what that reminds me of, remembering that even when a person is not looking, your manager's not standing over you, still work your hardest because God is always watching and you're working for a higher power. It really reminds us that the jobs that God blesses us with, they're truly a gift. He gives us the ability to work, to get wealth, to do all these things. And we need to show him that gratitude by giving it our all. So you have over 15 years of experience as a youth leader and pastor. You were briefly appointed as a missionary, and you also still serve in the church. And like you said, you were a concrete worker. How do you balance work, family, and serving in ministry? Because that's a lot.
It is a lot. So at first when I was doing ministry, I was going to like 4 or 5 different churches, trying different church plants, and we were working really hard, going to different Bible studies, and eventually you get burnt out. and somewhere gets neglected. I was, unfortunately, at the beginning, this is all before the homelessness. I was neglecting my wife. I was neglecting my kids. And after this whole thing of switching from that, God kind of told me, like, Satan can use ministry to distract you from God. And that I like to think about busy is being under Satan's yoke. So I try to be like, okay, I got to focus and realign myself. So when we moved over and I had my job, I do maybe in the summertime, I do about 12 hours a day on average. And then in the wintertime, I'm able to slow down and focus on my children's books. And during that time, I try my best to spend time with my kids, spend time with my wife outside of work. And then I also volunteer at the church about like once a week. Sometimes we do a little bit more. But when I get asked to do other things outside of those, I have to tell people no, even though I want to do it. But I've experienced that burnout. And then with that, you're able to have a little bit of joy in doing all those things, and people can see, and they think it's a lot, but in the end of the day, I said no to so many other opportunities that it's not that much. The other mindset that I have, especially with my kids. So I'll ask you, LaShaundra, when you get older, do you experience time going faster?
It feels like it, yes.
Right? As we get older, time goes faster and faster and faster. And what most people do is they take this and say, you know what, I need to get all the most that I can in my life before it's over. I got to keep on doing all of these things. But you have to also remember that for your children, time is a lot slower than it is for you. So you take that 10 minutes out of your time, which is not a lot, and you give it to them. And for them, it's like the world. And so you just got to think about time management more of a, hey, look, like this person's time, they experience it more slowly. So I'm going to let them enjoy the presence that I have at that moment. It's a lot more impactful for them than you realize. Instead of trying to go day by day, trying to make something happen so that you can have miraculously all the time left in the world. And then you just realize that you don't have the time anymore and you just wasted it.
Wow, that's powerful. You said that the devil can use ministry to distract you. That's really good. And I think people do need to pay attention to that, because when we become so busy and like just consumed with things, and we're always going here and doing this and doing that, even something that appears to be good can be bad. So I'm glad you said that. That's so powerful. And we always need that reminder. Sometimes we need to just sit down and get back to God and figure out what it is that He needs us to do in our current season. Balance, and sometimes it's not equally balanced, but just flowing with the season that you're in is so important. So you are a children's book author as well, and you currently have 6 published books. So what is the core like theme or focus of your books? And why did you choose children's books specifically?
So I'll start with children's books specifically. When I was 16, I felt like I had a calling to become a writer. And when I went into the homelessness at 30 years old, I actually started writing then. So it's like 14 years before I felt like I was supposed to do it. And I just needed something to kind of like distract myself, something that I can work on, something that when I could accomplish and be like, I am done. Like the book wasn't good, but it was more for my mental health to be just like, I accomplished something. I can do it. And then I started trying to write another book, and I told myself I need to write one word every single day. And I did that for about 3 months, or a minimum of one word. Did that for about 3 months. And eventually I wrote another book. So then I'm like, okay, maybe I'm supposed to be an author. And I've been trying to, and it's just, for me, it's just strenuous and hard. And one day I just looked at my other books that I have written, and the thought was, why don't I just do children's books? And as I started to write, they flowed a lot better and they came out a lot easier for me. And so I'm like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I wrote all of these books, and then I saw about like AI, and I was going to do the AI art, but I couldn't figure out how to do that. It wasn't consistent. It was too difficult for me. And so then I'm like, wait a minute, I have all of these books. What am I supposed to do now with them? So I found someone who could illustrate them for me and said, let's, I got all these books. I got to do something. The theme right now for most of them, it's more of like a Robert Munch kind of style book, but I do kind of more of a self-help or kind of like just a joyful kind of thing. So one of my favorite books is called The Superpower You're Born With. And it teaches kids and parents that we are all born with a superpower, but as we get older, we just forgot what that superpower was. And our superpower is to be childlike. And so the book explains how it's like to be childlike and look at all these things that you've accomplished already at your young age, like walking or riding a bike or reading or doing math. Like you've accomplished these things, you didn't give up. And that we're not actually supposed to be perfect. We're supposed to be growing continually. We just finished our 6th one, and we published it. I don't think it's on my website yet, but we're in the work. It's called the Joy Thief, and that one actually talks about how there's people in your life that are trying to steal joy from you, and how that joy comes from within, and how when you are joyful, it will actually kind of push them away.
Yeah, wow. I think adults can benefit from reading the books too, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's kind of like the whole purpose, to bring the family together. One of the things I like to think about with my family is that I don't know everything. And it's nice to come together and then we can learn and grow together as a unit, rather than me having to say, you know what, I'm better than you and you got to listen to me.
It's important for our kids to see that we're human too. Yeah. You know how sometimes when you're a kid and you look at your parents, you think they're just superheroes, they're incredible, they can do no wrong. And then as you get older, you're like, wow, you really need some therapy or something. What's going on? But it's like you realize that, hey, they're human too. They make mistakes. They're not perfect. They get angry. So I think that's important for us to really understand.
Yeah, I talk to my kids about that all the time. And I sometimes they'll think I'm unfair, and I'll let them know, I'm like, you know what? You might be right, because I'm learning how to do this. And I hope you guys can forgive me for that moment. And let's learn and grow from it. And I'll try my best to be more fair and more patient. What
has been, I guess, like the hardest lesson, or one of the hardest lessons that you've had to learn, whether it be as a husband, as a father, as an evangelist, or just in general, one of the hardest lessons you had to learn?
The hardest lesson. So one time I was listening to this, when I was a missionary, I was listening to this sermon. So the guy was like almost like extra. He wasn't holding anything back, because he was talking to a room full of missionaries. And he said, look, people get their identity from their father, and how they view their earthly father is how they will view their heavenly father. And so he was talking about how you need to have a good concept of who God the Father is, and to separate your earthly father from that, and to really grow and learn about God. And so I have to do my best to represent Jesus to my kids so that they can have a healthy identity. And so I'm more now focusing on how to be more like Jesus, how to be more loving, compassionate, kind, for them, because that's how they're going to grow up, and that's how their relationship with God's going to be when they get older and move on.
Yeah, that's a good lesson. Definitely a good lesson to learn. And then one last question I have for you. Where can our community connect with you and purchase your books?
Yeah, you could find me at robbycarlson.com, and I'll have a list of all the books there, and you can buy them through the Amazon. If you want, you could go to your local bookstore and just ask for those books. And if you aren't, fortunately, not able to afford one of those books, then you can just go to your local library and ask them for a copy, and they'll get you one.
Perfect. And I'll make sure to include all your details in the description. Robby, thank you so much for coming on the show and all the wisdom and everything that you've shared today. And to our lovely community, thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe to us on YouTube, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.